Okay, continuing where we left off yesterday. Yesterday we were discussing the difference in kashering for Pesach. You have Hagala, which is the hot water process. We discussed that the Hagala doesn't destroy what's absorbed, it just spits it out. And therefore the din is you have to wait 24 hours prior to the time you want to kasher it, anytime you want to do Hagala. Libun, on the other hand, even Libun Kal, according to the Alter Rebbe, you don't need to wait 24 hours because Libun is direct fire that burns it out. So we're not afraid it's going to spit out and go spit back in because you're destroying it. So it doesn't matter if it was used within 24 hours or not. Now there's another aspect, and to explain this is as follows. If I want to kasher a utensil, so how do you normally kasher a utensil? You take a pot, a larger pot, you heat it up with water, boiling hot, and then you put the pot in.
The utensil.
The pot that you want to kasher in a larger, utensil, okay, it doesn't matter. You put the utensil, the pot, inside the bigger pot while it's boiling. Now what happens if you want to kasher, let's say, a sink, or a countertop, or something like that? Now ideally, what you would have to do is pick up the sink and put it into boiling hot water. Because when you pour water out from a kettle, it's not as hot as when you put the utensil into the boiling hot water. So now if somebody wants to kasher a sink, let's say, and there are different opinions about this, we're just discussing the concept before we get into the halacha. What happens if I want to kasher the sink? Now technically, if I want to do it right, I would have to pick up the sink and put it into a pot, which I'm not doing. You can't do that. There is a way of doing it, by the way. They have in the hotels commercial water heaters. Now I've seen them. They're like this big. It's mamish a heating coil. What they do is you can fill up the water in the sink all the way to the top of the sink, and then you immerse that heating coil in it, and it actually bubbles the water. I've seen it done in the hotels. It mamish bubbles the water boiling hot, and then it's like you put the sink into boiling water. Yeah. You're going to have to throw something in that the water should overflow to the outside of the sink. It's similar to, they used to, I think they probably still have them. If you wanted to make a cup of tea or coffee, they would have this little coil, you plug it in, and you put a cup of water and you put it in and it actually boils the water. So this is a commercial massive one that actually heats up sinks. And that's, by the way, many times when they kasher hotels for functions or for Pesach, that's what they use to kasher the sinks. So, but the problem, you can't put the sink into the boiling hot. So what do? So many opinions hold, you have what's called Even Meluban. Even Meluban literally means a stone that was made red hot, not a little stone. So in other words, let's say, okay, let's use this as an example. Okay, let's say I want to heat up, kasher a sink. So you take a brick or a big rock, and I heat it up on the fire red hot. Okay? Now, obviously not with your hands. You take tongs or something, and you take it off the fire, and there's two ways of doing it. Either you pour the water over the rock, or you pour the water on the sink, and then you take the rock and go all over the places where the water is. Now what does that do? This hot rock heats up the water, boils it as if it would be inside the pot. Now many poskim hold you have to do it some poskim hold. You don't have to do it for Pesach. Many people are machmir. Okay? Even though if you didn't, then it's good. So this is let's say it's called Even Meluban. So when I pour water over something that I really should put into the pot, but I can't, so then when you pour water either directly on the sink and then you go over with the hot water, the hot rock, or you pour directly over the hot rock and you go over the sink, so then it kashers it as if you put it inside the sink. You can use a hot iron too, but the only problem with the iron is like this. You have to plug it out. If not, you kasher yourself. Literally, you can, God forbid, electrocute yourself if the iron's plugged in while you're pouring water over it. Oh. Don't do that at home. Your wife still needs you. Yeah, what some people do is they heat up an iron. It's just practical because then you have a handle on the iron, but it can ruin the iron. So people do it with the iron, they don't care if they ruin it. So also the same thing, you heat up an iron, very hot, and then when you pour the water over the iron, you go around with the iron, just easy because you have a handle to move it around. Same thing. There's another inyan of kashering that's called milui ve'irui. Now, those of you that grew up in the old home, like they say, people to say, okay, put it in the bathtub for 3 days. Put the thing in the bathtub for 3 days, submerged in water, and that's going to kasher it. What is that all about? You have to what? But what is that concept? People make a mistake. I remember when I moved into one of my houses, and Doheny it was, the landlord who was Jewish but not Jewish. So he thought I can't kasher the dishwasher. She says, why can't you kasher the dishwasher? Pour salt over it. She made a mistake between chickens, you kasher with salt. She knew you kasher a chicken with salt. So you can kasher the dishwasher with salt, put salt over it. It's a true story. She thought it happened to me. She said to me, or people think something that goes straight, if you bury it in the ground for 24 hours and it becomes good. I mean, it's another Baba Maisa. But there's a din like this. 1 minute. There's a din like this. We learned it already a year ago. And that is, we learned absorption is through heat. Right? You absorb something through heat. But there's another way that something can become absorbed in a vessel, even with cold. If I take this pot, say pretend it's closed, yeah? I take this pot, brand new pot, and I put milk in it for 24 hours, cold milk. There's a din that's called kavush k'mavoshel. When it's there soaking for 24 hours, it's like it was cooked in it. So therefore, if I take a brand new pot and pour milk in it, cold milk, and leave it in there for not 23 hours, 59 minutes, 24 hours or more, then the whole pot is considered as if it cooked in milk. So how do I kasher this pot? Remember, the way it goes in is the way it goes out. So one of the ways you can kasher this pot, whatever, is you immerse the whole pot in water, cold water, for 24 hours, change the water, immerse it again for 24 hours, change the water, and immerse it again for 24 hours. Okay? So let's say, you could do hagala, but I'll tell you where you can do hagala. What happens if you have an earthenware vessel?
What?
Earth, cheres. Okay, you have a mug that's ceramic. And somebody left, let's say it was a halachic mug. Okay? And somebody by mistake put a cup of milk in the refrigerator, in that cup, and it was left there for 24 hours. So now you have, it's a halachic mug, but now you have milk cooked in it because of 24 hours, it's considered as if milk cooked in it. Yeah? So then how do you kasher this mug? Because the Alter Rebbe says the Saloch Mili Ilu helps even by Kli Cheres. So how do I kasher this mug? I soak it, take a bathtub, just practically speaking. You fill up the bathtub in water, you submerge the mug in the water for 24 hours, change the water, 3 times, 72 hours, and then the mug becomes kosher, even if it's cheres. And that helps in Pesach too, by the way.
Only if it was cold to begin with.
Huh?
It goes back to fleishik?
It goes back to fleishik.
You can't make it neutral.
No, you can't make it milchik because it doesn't kasher from the flesh. It just kashers from the coldness, the cold that went in now comes out.
So definitely cannot work for
So now I'll give you an example. There's a very famous machlekes between the Bais Yosef and the Ramah, which obviously makes the way Sfardim hold and the way Ashkenazim hold. There's a very interesting, extreme argument by glass dishes, glass cups. One opinion, the Bais Yosef holds in Shulchan Aruch, that glass does not absorb. It doesn't absorb, even with heat. So glasses or glass plates or whatever, you can use the same glass for milchiks and fleishiks and Pesach and year round. That's what the Bais Din holds. Why? Because again, what's the problem with a vessel? It absorbs. Then when you use it, it's going to spit it out. But if it doesn't absorb, it never became treif or chametz or milchik or fleishik. Okay? Now, the Ramah holds mamish the opposite. Not only does it absorb, you can never kasher it. That's what the Ramah holds. Mamish extremes. According to the Bais Yosef, you could use the same glass for milchiks and fleishiks and for Pesach. And the Ramah holds, no, you can't, it's treif, you can't even kasher it.
What's the cheshivas behind that? How can they be two completely different opposites? Like, what's the operative thing in the glass?
The operative things, does it absorb or not? Or is the absorption enough that it makes it called absorbed in halacha? So therefore, one second, there's another interesting thing. So the machlekes of the Bais Yosef and the Ramah is essentially in Hilchos Pesach. So there are poskim that hold that the Ramah is only machmer by Pesach. And that year round, because we said, remember yesterday we learned Pesach is stricter. So the Ramah holds, this is what some poskim hold, that the Ramah is only machmer by Pesach. Year round you can have the same glasses, milchiks and fleishiks, and you find in many, not only by Sfardim for sure follow the Bais Yosef that they use the same glasses, milchiks and fleishiks, whatever. But you find even in many religious homes that they'll use the same glass, not Pesach, but for milchiks and fleishik. We don't paskin like that. We paskin that we don't use glass for milchiks and fleishik. We don't kasher glass. But the difference is like this: if you have a fleishik cup and then you put milk in it and was left in the refrigerator for 24 or not whatever, it was left in the cup for 24 hours. So then it becomes treif. So you can kosher it by taking milivili 72 hours, and that helps by glass, that helps by earthenware, that helps by everything else.
So if you mess up the glasses, to the evidence, it's much more lenient.
I know the Rebbe told people, I don't want to say who, but the Rebbe told somebody about, they asked the Rebbe about going to people's houses that are not from, and they offer him a cup of tea. You know, I'm talking about years ago, you know. So he asked the Rebbe, what should he do? And the Rebbe seemed to say, it's glass, it's not so bad, you know. There's a bigger shav about tabling the kalim, but that's a separate issue. I'm going to that now.
That's not on you, that's on the owner.
But the shav is, can you eat the food? Okay, that he's, what?
Did the fruit cab ever say that it's okay to drink tea in anyone's home? If you've ever offered?
Never heard it.
It sounds like
What?
In the case of the earthenware that you mentioned,
I read the
it's not
story.
all milk,
Shh, one second. What?
hot milk, then there's no way.
No, hot milk is a different story.
Then it's not, it's blood.
Hot milk is a different story.
Then it's kind of constant.
No, then, right. Oh, the way Ashkenazim hold, you can't kash it. But some people say it only applies to Pesach, year round, it doesn't matter. But again, this is all,
The way to implement this 72 hours is every time you have to change the water.
yeah, it doesn't have to be every 24 hours, you could change every 25 hours and 26 hours, but you need it another 24 hours. I mean, you don't have to stand there at exactly 24 hours and change it. You can leave it there 25 hours, change the water, and they have to leave it another 24 hours at least. But then, what?
If the bullet comes full, 24 hours to have it absorbed cold, so why isn't one day soaking in water on it?
Because a Chomim established that to take it out takes 72 hours. Not only that, you have to change the water. You can't use the same water. If you left it in the same water for 72 hours, it's only good for 24. You have to do it twice more. It's still no good.
Is that as good as Haggadah and Lippin?
Again, if that's only cold, though. Once it's used hot, you have to use Haggadah or Liban. And if it's,
the word is 3 cycles. I mean, like.
yeah, 3 cycles at least, 24 hours each.
72 hours, but I mean 3 cycles of the other day.
Yeah, but it could be more than 72 hours.
So that's only if it was absorbed by cold.
I said that. Only as you have the same case. I'll give you an example. You have a leaky milk container in the fridge. Okay? And the milk is leaking down. This happens. It used to happen when the Chol Yisrael milk containers weren't as good as they were today, which are also not great. So they used to leak a lot. So many times the shaila was that people have milk in the fridge and it's leaking from underneath the milk straight onto chopped meat. It's all cold, but sometimes it's there for 24 hours. By the way, if it's there, I'm not joking, 23 hours and 59 minutes, it's still good. Not the meat. The problem with the meat is it goes, you can't do anything about that. Because how are you going to get the milk out? But it leaks into a fleischer container, whatever, and people don't realize. I'll tell you another example. Somebody has a tub of dirty dishes in the sink, and they put in a fleischer dish by mistake. And it's there in the tub for 24 hours. So then you have a shaila, it became fleischer milk, it became treif.